Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dyson Leadership Podcast. So often I bring in guests from different parts of the world, different career paths, different leadership coaches to come and share wisdom, insights, some thoughts that are impactful. Today is another one of those international guests. So I am joined by a gentleman from Switzerland, and he's going to be sharing about a book he co-authored with the famous Brian Tracy. Many of you might be familiar with Brian Tracy, but we will get into that. So again, I'm going to try to pronounce your name. It is a little different since it's a foreign name, and I want to be respectful to that. But Ouly, I believe
Ouly.
I'm pronouncing that right. Yes. So
Yes.
please go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience and share a little bit about kind of what you do and who you are before we start to discuss in more depth the book that you want to share with us today.
Thank you for this warm welcome, Nick. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored to be here with you today. My name is Ouly Reymond, and I'm the maximum performance coach that helps average people to become champion. Because as a background, as a vice-champion of judo of the world master, but also as business owner of 3 successful companies, I have expertise and skills as well as health, mindset, business, and finance to leverage people's life.
Thank you for that introduction. I know when we first were engaging and chatting, you sent over some of your information. I thought it was very interesting that you had the judo background as well as business owner background. There was a lot of really interesting things it seems like you've done in your life. But then also on top of that, the book with Brian Tracy. So that's really our topic for today. We want to dive into what that book is and what it means. So how about you give us a little bit of an idea? What is the title of the book for our podcast audience? And then tell us a little bit about the specifics. What kind of content is in the book? And what are some of the key takeaways that somebody could get from that book as they're reading it?
Yes, thank you very much. So first of all, I just wanted to share about my story, how I became a coach and how much I struggled because of it. Because first of all, I am an osteopath. That means that I work with my hands and I help people to recover for their health. But as you said, I also have this background in judo and discipline that helped me to build also a strong business model. And I wanted to say to everybody that finally, I am not the champion that was born champion, but I am the normal man, the average man that decided to be on this path and to explore a journey, an adventure of life, to welcome some experiences. Some are very good, very interesting, and some are very tough. And I'm sure you had the same in your life, Nick. And that made me the man I am today. And, the first experience I had when I was a child is finally because I was different from other people. That means that I lost my hair. And as you see me, is how I was since I was 10 years old. So you can imagine that children are not tender with children. And I suffered a lot. I was a suffer pain and I had to grow to say, but why are my friends so unfriendly with me? Why are they wanting to beat me, to be bad with me? And I could do nothing, just use my fist to defend myself. So it was physical first. And then I had to grow and to say, okay, I have to show people that I am not only the guy with no hair. So I had to be better first at school. And potentially I was good with learning things. And then also in a physical area, and that's why I was not the best in judo when I was a child, but I just went through the process, and many were more talented than me and stopped before me. I was just the guy that was going through, that was enjoying the process, try to resist, try to be tougher, and that is what I am today. And that's why I relate also with a lot of people that are struggling in their life. What I can say before to speak about the book is to show people how much I care from them and how much you can be impactful in your life. And I have a group. I have a group, and I saw also you shared a lot of leadership training, also with the best of the best. It's when you are surrounded with fantastic people that you grow, and everybody can be a role model. And I decided finally to embrace it, because when I was younger, I said, okay, I am the good warrior. You can say to me, go to the war or do this, and I will do. I will just respect and do the job and not ask questions and do it as properly as possible. But at the end, it's when you are a leader that the game becomes interesting, because a lot of people are just followers or consuming their life, not being active. And I take, for example, the Pareto rule, 80-20, I'm sure you know about it. And you can say 80% of people are passive, just followers, as you see on social media. And then 20% are active. In these 20%, you have 80%, I would say 15% of the total that are active, commenting or sending a message, and only the top 4% are leaders. So they are posting something, as you do too, Nick, very interesting. You are inspiring people. And then at the top of the top, you have the leaders, inspiring leaders, the 1%. It's when you are a leader, you have to take tough decisions. You have to go against a lot of people that have not the same mindset as you, that you are finally defending lies that are told from the media or from friends, but you have to take the courage to say the truth. And that is the journey of a leader. So finally, we wanted to speak about the DUP. We speak about leadership, and I think it's very important nowadays to have strong leaders and also young leaders as you. I don't know how old you are. Perhaps you can explain.
Yeah, I'm in my 30s.
Okay. And it's a pleasure to speak with such talented people as you, because you are doing a podcast, you are doing so much things to inspire people, and it's life finally begins to be worthy the day you are helping others to level up, helping others to be better. And some people don't want to change. And I can reflect on my neuroscientific knowledge about this. It's because when you are somebody, finally in your brain, you don't want to change, because if you change, you are not the person you are, or not more the person you are. And that's why it's so difficult for people to have a new behavior, because a part of them don't want to change. You want to know for certain who you are. And when you are in the process of change, that means that you are not the same as you were before. So you are first to accept that a new personality, a new you will emerge from that. And that's why it's so difficult for people to change behavior.
Absolutely. You've said so much already. That's kind of fascinating. So I want to give our podcast audience just a moment, and I want to call attention to a couple things that you shared or a few things that you shared that are impactful that I want you guys as the audience to really listen to. So one of the things that he mentioned is he used social media as an example, that many people are not active. They are just consumers. They're not producing anything. And I've seen people use different percentages. I've seen people argue that over 99% of people on social media platforms just consume. And it's only the 1% that even post anything, let alone post consistently. So if anybody is on the podcast, listening to the podcast, and you're thinking about starting your own podcast, starting a YouTube channel, starting a media business, branching out on social media to share ideas, or maybe it's even writing a book or co-authoring a book like my guest here today has, you will find that very few people ever get started. Most people just consume and take in. Very few people will ever actually go and take a step out and get started. So another interesting point that you made is you referenced seeing some of my content where I've done training. I'm in different areas with other leaders and other people, even on this podcast, bringing on guests and leaders and people to share insights. This is one thing that I've learned from John Maxwell and other leadership trainers and coaches is if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Because if you are the person that you are the top and you can't learn anything from being around that group of people, you kind of need to find a new group of people to hang around. And so for me, I'm all the time looking for guests to come on and share different ideas, different insights, because I learn along with you as my podcast audience, as well as new books or new ideas to listen and learn, conferences to go to, people to engage with, because it grows me. And then I can go and then grow other people. So that's also very, very important. So I think those are a couple great insights that you've shared so far. I just wanted to call attention to them, kind of reiterate them, bring them back around for the audience again. So tell me a little bit more about now as we're kind of getting to the book and you co-authoring with Brian Tracy. I do want to hear more about that. So how did that come about and how do we get to that?
Yes, but before you said something interesting. So sorry, I come back to other things about leadership. And I agree with you about the room in which you are. So surround yourself with good people. But sometimes you are perhaps the smartest person in the room. And that doesn't mean that it's not your role to be there. And I will explain you through this story. A young man from India came to me on LinkedIn. I didn't know him. Perhaps he saw some of my posts. He saw perhaps that I was having a book with Brian Tracy. I'm interested with what you say. Can I come? And I wanted to also write a book with different people. And I was, wow, just the effect I had through this book. That's the first part. And I say, okay, interesting. You are young and it's good. I can give you some advices because I already went through the process on how to build a book with different co-authors. And I am one of the person that wrote the book with Brian Tracy. And finally, he became my mentee. And I saw him posting some things and I had to pull his ears because he was too emotional. But I see in him a great leader, future leader, a person who is standing for justice, a person who is sharing with his guts what he has inside and not letting the poor person on the road, as 90% of people, he has legs broken and everybody is going on his phone and not taking care about the situation. No, he's the person who is standing for. So I had to help him. And finally, I am the smartest person in that room for him. But what an experience for me to be this kind of person, of leader, that is helping a young leader to become even a better leader than me. And if I grow better, I will help him for sure. But in the relationship, it was not meant to be like that. But because I saw him struggling and I see how I could help him, then it was a fantastic experience to help him to level up, to become better, to be a better master of his emotions. Because a leader, it's also something I learned with judo. Sometimes you are in a arm lock or a strangulation. You suffer, you have no breath, and you are short of air, and you have to manage this kind of situation. And the leader has to face this kind of situation when it comes here and there and you have a lot of things on the plate and you are bombarded with informations and people that want to make you dive and you have to just take a breath and that's so interesting because it's a skill. You have to learn it. You have finally to learn it also physically, what it means, what it represents. And that's why people look at people on the top to say, oh, but it's easy. Oh, but I would be at his place. No, because it's a sacrifice. Sometimes even you have to sacrifice some of your relationships. You have to sacrifice sometimes your time or your comfort. And it's not meant for everybody to be a leader. It's absolutely not meant for everybody. A huge part of people are very easy in the comfort zone and they would have more responsibilities, but finally It's only the few that are on the top that understand how tough it is to be at the top. And I have this analogy in the nature that finally you are the highest tree, and people say, yeah, but he has all the light, because the higher you are, the less light is for the people that are under. Yes, it's a fact. But because you are the bigger and the stronger, that's why you have the storm coming on your top. And that's why you are protecting also the small trees to grow, because you are the protector too. And that's a tough way to be at the top. So thank you for this opportunity to speak about this way of how I see the leadership. And now I want to go into the topic with the book, if it's okay for you, Nick.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
So this collaboration is just something I wanted to have, also to increase my recognition and also to be perceived as a better coach, to be totally honest. And that was the case. And I said, okay, I invest in this relationship because I want also to be attached with Brian Tracy's name. And then we had the opportunity to build a topic. And my way to build the topic about business is also to build the person that is doing business. And that's why, for having a strong foundation, you need three things. One is to know who you are as a person. Two, what are your values? What are you standing for? And three, what is your mission? What is your visions? And once you have these strong foundations, then you can grow. And I can take the example of a tree. What you see from outside, I take the example before. When you see a fantastic tree, a sequoia, you say, wow, he is amazing. But what you don't see is underground, is the roots. And the roots, to have a fantastic tree, a very big and solid trunk, you need to have strong as hell foundations. You need to have very strong foundation. You cannot have a very high tree without strong foundations. First is the foundation. First is the roots. You have to need to know who you are, what are you standing for, what is your hierarchy of values, and what is your mission. And then take care of your trunk is your health. Physically, mentally, emotionally, be able to manage all your emotions, manage your life, your health. And then you have the fruits and the branches that are coming with spirituality, for example, but also what you let as a legacy. Finally, at the end, what is important also for me, actually, people say, yeah, but you have a beautiful life. And I say, yes. And what is most important for me is finally not to have a lot of people to coach, because I have my osteopathic job with which I can live finally. And most important is, on my opinion, to build a legacy. That's why a book is a legacy. You will read it. Potentially your listeners will read it. And that is an effect that you let on people's mind. And that is planting seeds. And I have another book in preparation on how to be an alpha, a very good leader. We spoke a little bit about it. And I would be happy to speak more about it if you let me come another time on your podcast. That will be about leadership. But today is really about building a strong foundation, on knowing who you are and having the best relationship possible with other people, in respecting you, yourself, your boundaries. Because if you don't know where you are going, you end up nowhere. So you have to have a clear goals and also an opinion of who you want to become. And just because you did this podcast means a lot for me, Nick. It shows me the person you are, because it's not only, okay, I am doing a podcast, but you have to have the mindset of a person. What is a person wanting to have a podcast having in his mind? What does it mean about the time you invest in you, the time you invested in your personal development, and also the equipment you need, etc. All of it should have been taken before, and finally you see just you on the screen, but most of the people don't understand what it represents and all the work you had to do before to be at this stage, isn't it?
Absolutely. So there's a few things you said, and I kind of want to touch on them very quickly. So the first one you mentioned, lack of direction, and one kind of mental picture that always comes to mind for me is if you put a couple people in a rowboat and one is rowing trying to go left and one is rowing trying to go right, and they just don't know where they're going, and then they both row on the same side. When they're trying to row straight, they're going to spin in circles. You need to have that direction. And I think your direction, your focus, the core values and character things that you're describing that are in the book that you wrote, I think those are fantastic. But it's really interesting that your passion, your kind of motive for writing the book is actually a very noble one. Actually, we'll talk and teach on the legacy of leadership quite often because I want people to know that their impact, what they stand for, what they do, their actions have meaning for now, but they also can have meaning for people long term. That you may help somebody and it helped them in their life, and then they teach that lesson to their kids, and then their kids teach it to their kids. And you may not realize it, but there's the impact through generations of things
Yeah.
that you do. And I also think your motive behind that's very similar to John Maxwell. So I remember John Maxwell telling the story when he was getting started writing. He had zero interest in being an author. He did not want to write books, but he talked to someone who had been writing books and just asked them why. Why do you write these books? Why do you do that? And this individual told John, it's because there's so many individuals that will never be able to come hear me speak or to be able to meet me or talk to me, but this book can be something of mine that goes to them and they can read it and take it, and I can enhance my influence to people that I have never even met before. And John said from that day he was going to start writing books, and he did immediately right after he started writing books, planning books. I mean, now in his case, I don't know anybody else that's written as many books as him. He's in like 80 something books written, which is crazy to think about. Also somebody, I'm in the process of writing a book, but it's for the same reason, because for me, the book that I'm writing is on imposter syndrome. And I know people deal with that, struggle with that, the feeling like they're an imposter, the feeling of not being worthy or not being good enough. Okay, well, I'll write a book on it. I'll speak on it, and hopefully more people take it and will receive that and be able to get some help for them, and maybe be able to share the book with others or teach it to others. And then that creates a legacy for me, a legacy that I was willing to talk about struggles or things that maybe other people weren't willing to talk about and have an impact. So your motive, that's just one of those that kind of resonates, because I see that in what John Maxwell started. I see that in my heart for writing a book is to help people and to be able to grow them in some way long term. And I see that in yours as well. And definitely, if you've got another book, maybe we can talk about that at another point in time. So it's very interesting too, because you were able to collaborate and get a name like Brian Tracy included as well, something that somebody recognizes. And I know often for coaches or people that are doing training or mentoring, anything like that, there's a lot of times it's hard to gain credibility. That's just kind of the nature of the business. And I know for me, you referenced earlier on, I'm a younger leader, but yet I've seen some people when I tell them I do trainings, I'm bringing John Maxwell's content and doing training. It's not Nick's content. And I'm trying to tell you I've got 50 years of experience, because I don't. I'm bringing John's and I'm just helping facilitate it. And that's a lot of what I do. I do bring some things, my experience, but I'm using that for credibility and to grow what I'm wanting to do. And so I think it's very similar in you writing with Brian Tracy. It's just a good partnership. It's a good way to get connected with somebody that's got a name and also get your message out there so people can be introduced to you and find out who you are. And now you're on the Dyson Leadership podcast, and you're going to be sharing this with my audience. So it's a way again just to kind of get your message out there, get your information out there. So I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Don't forget also, I'm not totally agreeing with you about you say, okay, but finally I am gaining authority because he has 50 years of experience. Because finally you learn of his 50 years of experience that is in you, finally. So you cannot say, okay,
Yes.
I have 50 years of experience, but finally, yes, it's a case because you were learning and having inside of you all the knowledge, not all the knowledge, but a large part of his knowledge. So finally, you have quite 50 years of experience for the leadership training you took with John. So fantastic.
Absolutely.
I wanted also to share two stories with the leadership.
Okay.
And one
Please.
is the first is sometimes you don't know that you are a leader.
It's
And
true.
I took one day a controversial point of view, and the person was saying to me, "Okay, oh, you were right, and you impacted my son when you were competing with him in judo." And I was, wow. I didn't know I could have had this impact. And the person said, yeah, you were always motivating him, you were supporting him, you were seeing him being better, and he learned a lot with you and your champion mindset. And I was okay. I didn't know, and I had not this impression to be this kind of person to have created such an impact. But now I know who I am and what I want to do, and I act intentionally to be an inspiring model. And that is what I have as a result with my coaching, because they are, as you know, of my environment, and you are the average of people you are surrounded with. So if you are surrounded with a person like me that has a champion mindset, and not only mindset, but also the results of a champion, then you acquire a mindset, a way of doing. And not only I change people because I know how to change them, but they are doing the process internally. That means that I have an example of a person that was obese doing the coaching with me, with a group of young teenagers. And he was doing 3 push-ups and was stopping, and I was doing, I don't know how much, but with the other, I tried to compete with them, to challenge them. And one day, because I always say, okay, do your max, do your max. He was stopping and then coming back. But the magic is he was doing on his own. I didn't know and needed to say, okay, you can do once more, one more, one more. No, he decided on his own because he was seeing the group and me acting like that to process internally to do it. And that is the magic when you are surrounded with good leaders, with champions. Finally, you become them because you act like them, you think like them, process like them, you have the same habits and also behaviors. And that is the magic.
Yeah, I think those are some great examples that you have for us. So I know we're kind of getting to the end of our time, so I want to give a couple minutes for a couple final questions, and
Mhm.
also want to ask. So, for any of the podcast audience that would like to check out the book, maybe pick up a copy of it, where could they find it and purchase your book that you co-authored?
So I think you will also put my links. You have everything on
Yes,
my
I will.
website. You can find me especially on LinkedIn, but I am also on Facebook and Instagram. I have different audiences. That means in LinkedIn, I post more about leadership. It's more business owner and entrepreneur. And for Instagram and Facebook, it's more about my coaching with teenagers, with parentality, and I help people in that term. And you can find the books on all this platform.
Perfect. Well, for a podcast audience, I will list uh, the website, I will list LinkedIn, and we'll find your Instagram handle. That'll be listed in the description as well. So
Super.
people will be able to find you. So what they're interested in, what maybe they want to resonate, or what they resonate with you with and want to connect with you on, they'll be able to
Mm-hmm.
find you and connect. And I'll be able to provide those links, and they'll be able to check out the book as well. So if you're interested, check out the description wherever you are either listening to or viewing this podcast, you'll be able to find those in the description of the podcast. So, couple wrap-up questions. These are the two questions I love to hit every single one of my audience or my guests with, and I think it's a good, just little value add for the audience. So if you had one bit of advice to a young leader, and I know you've talked about kind of the mentoring, coaching role that you've had, so you've been in this type of situation, but if some new person came up to you like that, was looking for a coach, a mentor, they were maybe a new first-time leader, what's one key bit of advice that you would want them to receive that you could give them?
The most important is to be surrounded with like-minded people. So have a look at your environment, be surrounded with good people with ambition, and align with them. I would say also hire a coach, a mentor. That is always the best investment you can make. You can go on the stock market, real estate. I do also real estate, but I invested so much in me, and that's why I am this kind of person today. I was not 10 years ago, and absolutely not 20 years ago. As I said, I was just an average person, and I grew in being a leader, and that I assume totally to be this kind of person. And if you cannot hire a coach or a leader, then read the books from the best of the best.
Yes.
That can be John Maxwell, that can be Brian Tracy, that can be Tony Robbins. And I wanted also to share the book that helped me a lot is Unlimited Power from Tony Robbins, because not only it's a book, but also you have a lot of exercises. And I know people pay the book, don't even look at the book. So you pay for a book, please read, please do the exercises. A lot of people will never have done the exercises he told in the book. And because I did the exercises, I just can explain one of also the beautiful story about this is you have to describe the person you want to share your life with, your ideal partner. And I described not only physically, but also spiritually, emotionally, sexually, what I was waiting for this relationship to live, to feel, to experience. And I had a list of 50 qualities, and I met a person that had 48 qualities of the 50. So because you imagine, you put, you write, you think as the person you want to meet, then finally you attract this kind of person. And for the two qualities that were not relevant at all is I thought she would have been younger than me and without and with children. That was not the case. So it was not so bad on 50 qualities.
Yeah, so that's great. So that book as well, I'll list in the description for any of our podcast audience that would like to check that out as well. This has been fun. I've enjoyed the chat back and forth, finding out a little bit about the book, and I'm sure our podcast audience, they got the little bit of a teaser, so hopefully they'll go and check this out as well. Maybe pick up a copy and be able to read it and be able to learn from it. That's ultimately the thing. You pick up a book, you learn from it, especially if somebody like yourself, most of my audience is here in the United States, you're around on the other side of the world, but you can still pick up that book and you can still learn from an individual like this, which is one of the most amazing things of our modern world is it doesn't matter how far apart you are, you can still learn from people.
And you also have not only the book, but also the ebook. So you can have a short version and also a low price version. It's very affordable, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say again, thank you for jumping on the podcast and joining me. I've enjoyed having you on and been enjoying hearing some of your story and your background. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Nick. I feel really honored to have been invited by you, and I wish you a fantastic continuation with your podcast. And I think it will have a huge impact, as we discussed, on people. It's all what I can say to you.
Thank you very much. And for the podcast audience, be sure to check the description for all those links, the information that I will be sharing in that. And keep in mind, there's a new podcast episode coming out every Monday. So be sure to subscribe, follow along, give us a like, rating, subscribe, review, whatever you can, whatever platform you got. Leave us something, help us out. help us to reach more people so that we can help people grow them and inspire some more leaders. So I want to thank you for being part of the Dyson Leadership Podcast, and I will hope you join us again for another episode.